what is the feminisation of poverty? What can we, what sort of characteristics do people attribute to this concept? And how relevant is this in the context of these three countries? Well, I mentioned previously that this is a term which is much used and also much abused. It's the kind of term where people sort of make throwaway comments about. They talk about a feminisation of poverty, but when you actually start looking for what that might mean, people are much more silent about its attributes, and oftentimes they don't actually substantiate it with sources, and they don't actually really articulate what they mean. Supposedly, the feminisation of poverty was first coined back in the late 1970s by a sociologist called Diana Pearce, who was working on trends in gender and poverty in the context of the United States, with particular reference to ethnicity. But if you like, the defining historical moment for the globalisation of this concept came in 1995 at the 4th UN World Women's Conference in Beijing, when it was famously stated that women were 70% of the world's poor and rising. This has since been proven to be an empirical impossibility by the likes of Alain Marcoux and Stefan Klassen. But nonetheless, this figure stuck, and it's amazing how often you see this figure repeated. At the moment, as Jasmine mentioned, I'm actually lead writing the first chapter of the UN Habitat State of Women in Cities 2012-13, and obviously been doing a lot more reading for that, and I've marked up at least 10 more documents in the course of doing research for this report, which actually come out with this categorical statement about 70% of the poor being women, and women-headed households being particularly poor among them. Now, when I did the research for my project, I basically did a mega literature review, partly made possible, obviously, by this time off from the LSE. So you can see from the bibliography of Gender, Generation and Poverty, it's fairly large, almost like half the book is a bibliography. But one of the reasons for doing this extensive literature research was review was really to try and find out, well, when people talk about feminisation of poverty, what are they saying about it? And from that, I sort of distilled, there were three main tenets, really. First of all, that the incidence of poverty among women is greater than the incidence of poverty among men. That's, if you like, one of the most common connotations. The second most common connotation is that the incidence of poverty among women relative to men is growing over time. So it's not just that women are already poor, but the gap is getting bigger between men and women. And last but not least, and perhaps one of the most troublesome of the tenets as far as I'm concerned, is that the incidence of poverty among women is growing because of widespread increases in female household headship. Female household headship referring to households which lack a male head. Okay.